Hello and welcome to the WrestleTalk Podcast, what would normally be the Team Danuke show. But unfortunately, Denise has got some scheduling conflicts, so it is just me for the moment. I am Luke Owen, DAD, your Jam That Champion. Tempest will be here in just a moment's time. But we've also got a very special guest. In fact, well, actually, before, and it's just got to adjust the mask. Let's get the gimmick in first. Can you give us a thumbs up, Tempo? You ready? It's Tempo T Yu-Gi-Oh! How are you, sir?
I'm all right, Luke. I'm all right. You know, This is not the best topic to be coming on this show to talk about, but at the same time, I do enjoy talking with you, and we should have a very entertaining show, to say the least, with our wonderful guest. So
indeed, yeah. I mean, I was actually just chatting with our guest just beforehand. Like, the way that I'm going to frame today's show is let's not dwell on the story itself. I want to celebrate them. I want to celebrate his stories, man. I want to talk about favorite moments. I know he's one of your favorite guys, so I think that we can have a nice little celebration of Jeff Hardy in this video.
I would very much like that.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it. But before we get into that, tomorrow night, it's ROH Final Battle. It's the end of an era. It's the end of ROH as we've sort of known it. And one of my fave guys is on the show with us today. A man who I have seen firsthand kill it at beer pong. Please welcome to the WrestleTalk Podcast, Shane Taylor.
Yeah. What's going on, boys? What's up? Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for being on here, my friend. How are you?
Man, I am good. Stressed, but excited, anxious. Been putting in all the work that I can physically, mentally, emotionally, trying to prepare for all this. Man, I am a buzz right now. I'm sitting here like twitching. I'm ready to go. I'm excited.
So whereabouts are you currently? Because you're not in Baltimore just yet, are you?
No, I am still home in Houston. I actually fly out tonight. I'll get in probably around 10, 11 o'clock tonight, try to get some sleep, hopefully. And then it's Final Battle.
So what does tomorrow look like for you?
Man, tomorrow looks like trying to wake up, get a quick workout in. And then it's all about the mindset, man. It's getting myself locked in for what is going to be undoubtedly the most physical match of my career against Kenny King, fight without honor. Man, and there's part of me that still wishes like this could have gone a different way. You know, he's been a mentor to me since I got to ROH. You could argue that I'm not sitting here having this interview if it wasn't for Kenny King. Right. So part of me wishes that, we were just kicking back and laughing and joking. And I would be defending the Ring of Honor World Championship potentially against Jonathan Gresham, tomorrow night. But here we are. Kenny cost me that, and now he's got to pay.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what I wanted to bring up. Actually, was like this is a personal battle, man. This is like real battle, and I think it's actually quite nice. And not to sort of dwell on the negative side of it, but it's kind of fitting that it's on this show, that it's on Final Battle, it's on this end of an era for Ring of Honor. So it's almost like, I don't want to say poetic, but it almost is in a way.
It very much is. There's this sort of cruel irony that's happening. You know what I mean? And man, there have been fewer people that have been as influential on my career as Kenny has. Like you could say Keith Lee and Ray Rowe would probably be the only other two. And so again, it's the man that I knew, the man that was my friend, the man that was my brother, wouldn't have done the things that he's done. He knew how important one of us winning the Ring of Honor World Championship would have been. The only black male to ever have done it in the 20-year history of the company is Jay Lethal. We've talked about what it would be like to add our names to that list, to give him some company at the top of the mountain. And so I never thought in my wildest dreams that the moment that I had to achieve that dream that we talked about, he was going to take that. He was going to take that from me, from the fans. I was looking forward to bringing that championship home to my daughters, you know what I mean, and showing them what Daddy did. But he took all that away. You could say it's jealousy. You could say, it could be a million things. But we now, after months of warning him to leave me the hell alone, has finally gotten to the point where we need to settle this. And I couldn't ask for a better opponent. This feels like Doc Holliday going into the OK Corral to have a gunfight with Wyatt Earp. You know what I mean?
Man, you're speaking my language, man. I'm a Blue Jays fan, so Doc Holliday is like number one. You
know what I mean? Like you just know that the other guy standing across from you is just as good as you. His aim is just as good. He's just as deadly. And you need to be on your game, because if you miss, you're not getting a second shot.
Hell yeah, man. I was asked, if you don't mind, Luke.
You go ahead.
Because you talked a lot about how Kenny King was kind of a mentor to you in the same way that Keith Lee and Ray Rowe were. How would you describe your relationship with the other members of Shane Taylor Promotions? And I don't know how much of a leadership role you've taken on in that stable, but could you talk a little bit about them too, and how you possibly think they will thrive now that Ring of Honor is changing in the very least?
Yeah, man, as the captain of the team, as the CEO of the company, the figurehead, that leadership role is one that I take very seriously. I try to impart the lessons that I was taught from Ray, from Keith, hell, even some from Kenny, into them. One of the very first things that I talked to them about when I sat them all down was what we wanted out of the sport, what we wanted from each other, the changes that we wanted to make to attack the stereotypes that a lot of Black athletes have in this sport, that dedication to educating not only the people who signed the checks, but the fans who are sitting in the seats as to just who we are as men, as a culture, because what you see on TV and movies and radio is 0.01% of who we are as a people. And for a long time, wrestling was very lazy about teaching that. So we've taken it upon ourselves to do that. And as far as Khan and Moses go, you are looking at a tag team that is bound to win a World Tag Team Championship somewhere and be the absolute fixture of a tag team division for a very long time. It doesn't matter where it is. O'Shea Edwards, man, you're talking about a guy who has every single tool that you would ask for in a superstar, in a main eventer, in a world champion. A guy that has overcome so many things and just goes out there and dominates and imposes his will on any opponent, on any platform, simply because he can, and of course you got my VP, Ron Hunt, the guy who helped me build this whole thing, is absolutely integral while I'm doing everything that I have to do mentally, physically, to get ready for every match. He's taking care of the financial stuff. He's getting everything, he's getting the deals done. And I say this wholeheartedly. Like, a lot of people, they don't have to wake up and ask themselves, how are we going to stay in Shane's good graces, or how are we going to stay a part of the team? Like, each of them are better than me at something, right? So I have to wake up every day asking myself, what am I going to do to be able to feel justified in leading these men?
We've actually had a chat in from one of our viewers today. Plasma PD says, good morning, Luke and Tempest. And of course, Shane T. Boy, the baddest champ you ever seen. Can't wait for Final Battle tomorrow night. It sucks I can't be there in person.
Oh man, if the energy of this show, I feel like I've tried to get myself ready for it, but I feel like it's going to be one of those things that's just going to hit you, and you're going to have to be in the moment, and feel what that's like. It's going to be one of a kind. I truly feel like it's going to be special, and with the talent we have on the show, everybody, I am sure, is looking to leave a lasting impression. So this is going to be one for the history books, I'm sure.
I mean, I suppose we can't talk about Final Battle without talking about the news that came out, only a few hours ago, really. I was covering on the WrestleTalk news earlier, which is Bandido.
Right.
Unfortunately tested positive for COVID-19, and Ring of Honor, as they have done pretty much since the start of the pandemic, has put the safety of its talent and its crew and its fans first, right. Which means he's no longer on the card. His title match with Gresham is now off. So I suppose, I want to ask, A, your thoughts on this, and B, there's a slot open there for a Shane Taylor, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. You never want to see one of your top guys not be able to do what they do. Obviously, with this being the show of this magnitude, the importance, the emotion, you want all hands on deck. So, hopefully a very speedy recovery for our world champion. With that being said, you're absolutely right. There is a spot now open to face Jonathan Gresham for either the vacated or interim Ring of Honor World Championship, or whatever they decide to do. I say the winner of myself versus Kenny King takes that spot. This whole thing started because he cost me the World Championship. It is the one thing that I feel like I need to do to cement my legacy at Ring of Honor. And to go out there against not only Kenny in one of the most violent matches that Ring of Honor has ever produced, but then to potentially step into the ring against the best pure wrestler on the planet today in Jonathan Gresham. I can't think of a better way to go out. You know what I mean? I can't think of a better showcase. And if by some miracle I pull that off, I can't think of a better way to end the story than the guy who wasn't supposed to be here, the guy that wasn't supposed to be in the match, the guy that nobody thought was going to be successful at the end of all this, holding the very top prize in the game. Man, that's I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about it.
I am too. You sold me. This is if it's not this way, it's a wash. No buys.
I mean,
we've had a comment left here. Rebecca Young. I'm flying up to Baltimore tonight for the show. I can't wait. I'm really stoked for the show tomorrow night. I won't be able to watch it live. I've got my DAD duties. I've got to put the kid to bed and stuff. But I'm going to be catching up on Sunday. I'm super stoked for it because it's a corking card. I think if you had to pick another match that's not yours, or it's not the potential possible main event, is there anything else that really stands out for you?
OGK against the Briscoes. Mm-hmm. It's not even a question. Knowing those four men like I do, knowing how they feel about Ring of Honor, knowing the blood, sweat, tears, the injuries, the time that they've put in, there is no doubt in my mind that I'm sure if they listen to this and hear me saying I'm going to have these kind of matches, and they're going, yeah, right. Like, they are ready to absolutely go to war. And that's going to be the match that I have my eye on because, man, the journey that Taven and Bennett have gone on to get those titles back versus the uncrowned, versus the unquestioned kings of Ring of Honor for the last 20 years in the Briscoes, one of the top 5 tag teams ever in the history of the sport. It's hard to pick against OGK, but if you were going to bet against them, you want to pick the Briscoes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Their chance to become 12-time tag team champions and end this era as they damn near started it, just running the place.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I remember watching Ring of Honor when the Briscoes were like a 7-time tag team champions, and that was impressive then. And to just see them continue to dominate and have so much success. I'm curious though, because the Briscoes are unquestionably one of the faces, or two of the faces, I suppose, in this case, of Ring of Honor. Mm-hmm. Who would you kind of consider to go on a Mount Rushmore of Ring of Honor?
That's a good one. First and foremost, Kerry Sokin. Without Kerry, there's no ROH. We're not having this conversation. None of the talents that have come through those doors, I'm sure they would have been successful somewhere, right? But Kerry help build all of this. So I think he goes up there. Then you're talking about probably Samoa Joe for his world title reign that sort of solidified the Ring of Honor world title and Ring of Honor itself as the title to have and the place to be. And then the Briscoes. I feel like those are the four faces that transcend the company and make it what it is. Without those four men, none of us are sitting here, reflecting on the last 20 years the way we are.
Shane, like, I know I don't want to take up too much of your time today. I know you got a busy schedule. You got to get yourself into the right mind space as well for your match tomorrow night. But this is the end of an era for Ring of Honor, and I will actually say, the door is open for you to come back onto the show whenever you want. Like, you just give me the call, and we'll get you back on here again. But I do want to ask, what is next for Shane Taylor? Shane Taylor Promotions. What is next for you? What's next for everyone?
What's next for me after Final Battle is probably a lot of ice and Epsom salts, a lot of swearing, probably a lot of alcohol. But honestly, me and the boys are gonna go to LA, and we're gonna get right back to the gym. We have a project that we're filming with one of the most legendary bodybuilders, lifters of all time, true inspiration to myself. I'm going to keep that hush until it comes out, so it's a big surprise. But we're going to love doing that. And then, man, come January 1st, man, it's all hands on deck, and we are coming out guns blazing. We want to hit every top independent, hit as many major platforms, not only here but overseas as well, and continue to build this brand, man, because we feel this is something special. For the last 2 years, we've damn near been building it just with us and the people. So when and if we get the chance to really get, some gas behind this, it's going to be incredible. So I'm looking forward to the challenge. I'm looking forward to having as much fun with my guys as possible for as long as we can.
Very lastly, before I let you go, give us your pitch. Give us your hype for Final Battle. Let's get everyone excited for it.
If you call yourself a fan of professional wrestling, if you've ever watched a show, if you ever bought a t-shirt, you are going to be watching the greatest single wrestling show that you have ever seen in your life. You are going to see men and women put everything on the line to make sure that you remember the legacy of Ring of Honor.
That's beautiful, man. That's so cool, man. I'm really looking forward to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today's podcast. It's been really nice to catch up with you as well. You and I haven't seen each other for a few years, so it's been nice to have a chat, man.
Hey, man, love it. Absolutely. Every time we get into talk with you, Ollie, man, it's always dope. Definitely have to come back across the pond, get some more beer pong in.
Oh yeah,
defend our championships. You know what I mean? So it'd be dope.
Laurie's looking for that rematch. Shane, thank you so much, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your day and good luck tomorrow.
All right, boys. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, buddy. What an absolute guy. Really loved having Shane Taylor on the show. It was funny enough, actually. So it was a Will Ospreay after party after a Rev Pro show. It was when I first started hanging out with Shane, and so it was the first time I'd met him. And yeah, it turns out he's real good at beer pong. Oh, he is. He's great at it. Right.
How are you at beer pong, Luke?
I am not great. I am actually quite poor. As you could quite tell, I'm an unathletic man. And that really extends to beer pong as well.
But beer pong is like a game. It's different from a sport.
Yeah, but it feels like a sport, though, doesn't it? And I'm bad. I'm also quite bad with my drinking as well. I'm not as not as good as I once was. Okay, Tempest. Let's we're going to unfortunately shift gears a little bit now, and it's not a gear shift that I'm particularly thrilled about. But as we said at the top of this show. I don't really want to dwell on the Jeff Hardy stuff too much. If you haven't heard the news, if you've been away, like this news broke while me and Ollie were doing the AEW show yesterday. We were in the middle of the show, and he was talking about Riho versus Hayter, which I was super duper like stoked to talk about because it was my favorite match of the night. And all of a sudden, I just saw the chat being like Jeff Hardy, and I was like, oh man. And I had this thing because it happen with you on the NXT show, right? Like someone was like spamming in there being like people are being released. And I was like, it's just another one of those. And then I saw that and I saw Sean's tweet and I was like, dang. So Jeff Hardy has been released from WWE. He had been sent home from a house show tour that they were doing over the weekend. He started a match, he tagged out, and then he left through the crowd and he was sent home after that. According to Sean, WWE offered rehab and help, and he declined. And we can, I think, safely presume that is why he was released from his contract. His wife has said that he's okay. He's feeling all right. Matt Hardy has said that he's home, and he is confident that he will be fine. Before we sort of get into this, I just wish the best for him. Addiction is. It's a beast. I said this on the news. And there's no other better way for me to put it. Addiction is a beast. It's not something that one can just easily overcome. I was getting a bit. I didn't check a lot of Twitter yesterday, and I'm glad I didn't because I did see a few people being like, "Oh, you just get rid of it. Does any other?" I was like, oh, "Man, addiction is not something you can just get past." I wish him and his family nothing but the best.
Yeah, I think you've basically covered it. Jeff Hardy has meant a lot to me as, like a lot of kids have baseball players that they look up to. For me, it was a wrestler, and it was Jeff Hardy growing up. If I didn't watch Jeff Hardy matches, I would not be a wrestling fan. So there's a lot of emotion going into everything, but at the end of the day, like I just want him to be all right.
Yeah. I mean, a similar story to you in a way, really. So I got into wrestling kind of a bit late, to be honest. I didn't have. So here in the UK, if you wanted to watch WWE or WWF as it was at the time, you needed to have Sky TV or a friend that had tapes. I had neither. So my sort of wrestling knowledge in the 90s was some kids down at my road had the Battle Royal at the Royal Albert Hall, which was won by the British Bulldog at a show where Hogan wasn't on it. And I remember like one of the commentators being like, that's because Hogan's in Hollywood, the big movie star. That's why he wasn't on the card. So that was kind of like all I had as my wrestling knowledge, right? And then year 2000, Channel 4, which is a free-to-air TV station over here, gets a deal with the WWF to air Heat. Yep, Sunday Night Heat every Sunday at like 4 p.m. or was it?
You lucky chaps, you.
Well, I mean, it's basically I got the recaps of Raw and SmackDown, so it's kind of grand in a way, I guess. So like I got an hour of Heat every Sunday, and we got 4 pay-per-views a year for free, and it was just on TV, just like on, and it was eventually I don't think Channel 4 really knew what deal they were getting into because then they were like, oh, what? Is this what wrestling is now? Oh, I don't think we like this at all. And then it became a bit of an awkward thing. So year 2000 is like my year of wrestling. So my first big pay-per-view that I watched was the Royal Rumble 2000. So Cactus Jack Triple H, I think one of my favorite matches of all time, an incredible Rumble that comes after that. But on that show, the Hardys Dudleys, the table match, and instantly I'm just like, oh, they're my guys. These guys rule. They're so cool. And me and my friends became obsessed with the Hardy Boys.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. And I do apologize for my voice. I'm a little bit sick today.
It's okay, bud.
You know, just for the sake of the sake. I think there's a decent possibility that the first Hardy Boys match that I would have ever seen could have also been that match. Because in a very similar way to you, 2008 was my year of wrestling. You know, the first show that I ever saw was like the SmackDown before the Royal Rumble that year. And I was just like hooked after that. Shortly afterwards, because Matt Hardy at the time was hurt, right? So there wasn't a whole lot of play between the two. And I don't know that there would have been anyway. They're on different shows. But their DVD comes out like 2 months later. And I was like, I got to watch this DVD. And the first match on that DVD is the Hardys against the Dudleys.
Dude, so cool.
It's so cool. And it's done I don't want to just gush about this one match, but like,
I mean, we can do
cool.
if you want.
It's so cool. That's the way that tables matches should be, because it was the rules where you have to put your opponent through the table. So they were able to do so many more table spots to keep things entertaining and exciting, because the Hardys were jumping off things and going through the tables while the Dudleys were rolling out of the way. And there's just a lot of really cool stuff. You know, I really enjoy that match. And it was an excellent introduction into these two guys that, like, I can't say enough for how much Jeff Hardy did for me as a 11-year-old wrestling fan.
And Craig here is actually I was literally just about to say the swanton off the balcony. And like Ollie and I recently just did Survivor Series 02 for WrestleTalk Extra, which also features another Hardy like swanton off the balcony. And I said, it was like, man, it's just like the Rumbles like 2000. And it made me it made me angry that WWE shows in Madison Square Garden don't look like that anymore. Like with that entrance and everything.
100%.
Oh, 100%. It winds me up. But yeah, like, so I went from that, and then at WrestleMania 2000, it's the triangle ladder match with Edge and Christian. And the year after that, and like, actually SummerSlam that year, you got the first ever TLC, WrestleMania X7, you got TLC too. And the Hardys, like, when I will never understand, I guess I can understand in a way, but as a fan, I never understood why they had such a boner for breaking that tag team up. Like, they're so good together, right?
Yeah. It's really wild when you go back and watch like their 2001 breakup. And it's like after the alliance and the invasion and everything, they do the big cage match at Survivor Series that year, and Jeff Hardy like jumps off the cage and loses it for the Hardys. And then the next month they do Jeff Hardy versus Matt Hardy with Lita as the referee.
Yeah. And
it's like, I don't think anybody ever truly wanted to see them fight.
No.
They were always a cooler package when they were together. And I think the only time that they've really ever successfully had a Jeff Hardy versus Matt Hardy relationship, or rivalry rather, was in TNA, doing the original Broken Matt and Brother Nero stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I was going to mention that, but actually, before we get into the TNA stuff, let's talk about some of his early WWE career. Because man, I could talk about his TNA stuff as well, because holy smokes,
you go on. I'm just going to blow my nose very quick.
You go for it, man. Because they did, of the two, I was a Jeff kid. Jeff Hardy was I really enjoyed watching Matt. But there was something about Jeff Hardy. Maybe it was the fact that he dyed his hair and he looked super cool. But yeah, Jeff was my guy. And his singles run, as much as the fact I was saying, I don't know why they kept braving him as a tag team. He was a great singles guy. And I know a few people have mentioned this in the chat, the ladder match against Taker is so good. It's one of I don't know where, I don't want to keep saying it's one of my favorites, but it is a match. If you ask me, what's your favorite Jeff Hardy match? I would probably go to that Taker ladder match.
I watched it last week. Still holds up. Every time that he's climbing that ladder and Jim Ross is screaming, "Make yourself famous." I'm like, maybe he's going to grab it this time. Maybe. And he never does, of course, because that's how the space-time continuum works. But
it does indeed.
I love that ladder match. I really do. And it, to me, I don't think I appreciated it enough when I saw it the first time, because again, I saw many of these matches for the first time when I was like 11 or 12, when I was just starting to get into wrestling. And I didn't realize quite where Jeff Hardy was in his career at that point. To have like a really solid ladder match on Raw for the title against The Undertaker for a guy who was just like basically a popular tag team guy, that was really kind of cool, you know? Yeah. And we haven't had very many more moments like that one.
It's kind of funny as well, actually. We had the moment yesterday on Dynamite when Punk came out to MJF's music, and it reminded me of Punk's feud with Jeff. Yeah. And he has that moment when he comes out and with all the makeup on and everything, and he does the pose, and you can feel the ripple through the crowd as they work out. Oh, that's CM Punk. Dick. That feud was cracking, man, against Punk.
It really was. And CM Punk has talked a lot about how that rivalry was the first thing that he was able to really sink his teeth into in WWE. You know, like before that, he was just nameless, faceless CM Punk babyface world champion, you know, coming out in straight edge and let's go.
That was no good. Oh, no.
Actually able. We good?
Tempest, you okay? Yep. Okay, I think you're back now. Is your internet all right? Okay.
I suppose. What else can go wrong? Bottom line is that gave CM Punk something to bite his teeth into in WWE. Yeah. And from a storyline perspective, I don't think that I've seen Jeff Hardy do better character work than in that whole rivalry. You know, it won like the best rivalry of the year in 2009 in the Wrestling Observer. And it was awesome. by credit of CM Punk and Jeff Hardy together making all that so special.
TNA, when I first got into TNA, Jeff was there. So like instantly, like when I first started watching TNA, I have got Jeff Hardy is there and Raven is there. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I like this place already. And then
Luke Owen guys.
Exactly, right? So it's like Luke Owen guys. And so like, and then before you know it, I'm starting to get into the guys like AJ and PD Williams, Chris Sabin, and all these sorts of guys. But like, it was like Jeff, you know, they often talk about those mainstream guys. And when I say mainstream as well, I do mean sort of like to the casual wrestling fan who at that point I was a lapsed fan. And all of a sudden I find this new promotion and there are guys that I recognize. Kind of in a similar way to what people have said about with AEW. It's like, oh, I recognize Jericho, or I recognize this guy, I recognize that guy, and that's what's making me watch the product. So Jeff was actually one of the guys that kind of stuck around for TNA, like, and I learned the new guys because I was like, man, cool, Jeff's here. Oh man, let's check this out.
Yeah, it was always weird for me with TNA because TNA was TNA, you know? And it was hard to watch a lot of the time. But
I mean, bearing in mind though, I got into TNA in 2004, so it was still cool to like it then. Like it hadn't got fully bad. I mean, it had like it had little people masturbating in trash cans, but you know, sometimes it was like you'd get Ultimate X matches, and it was great.
Yeah, sometimes you'd get Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels. It'd be the best triple threat match of all time.
Oh yeah,
but when I watched Jeff Hardy in TNA, it was like his 2010 run onward, you know, which was not. Yeah, it was the heel run. And I've said this story before, but they turned him heel on my birthday. Bound for Glory 2010, 10-10-10. That's here. My birthday. They're here. Turn Jeff Hardy heel. Now, granted, by that point, I wasn't so torn up about like baby faces and heels and oh no, like being a kid and seeing and throwing trash in the ring as Hulk Hogan turned heel. Like I was kind of past that, but it was still funny to me, you know. You won the TNA title, and that for a while was like a pretty big deal, you know. Like his ladder match with Austin Aries in I believe 2012 is still one of the better singles ladder matches that I've seen really ever, you know. And it doesn't get talked about enough. And that run as TNA World Champion where he ended up losing it to Bully Ray, like that's solid top babyface stuff that doesn't get talked about enough.
One of the things I actually love about Jeff Hardy, and like, you know, so do you know what? It's funny as well. Like I'm trying to find the best way to sort of like phrase some of these things I'm saying as well, because like someone mentioned in the chat, I was like, man, this sounds like a memorial show. And I was like, well, yeah, and I'm trying not to make it sound like a memorial show, because like I think Jeff is going to get back on this screen. I think we will see Jeff in the ring again. Whether that is, I don't know. I just hope that he is better when he gets there. Exactly. But like, you know, what's I find very impressive about Jeff Hardy, and maybe this is just because I am that wrestling fan, I can always find a period of time where I've liked his work. Like I can always just like pick out every couple of years and be like, oh, cool, there's some Jeff, no matter where it is. Because then, like, you know, if it's not WWE, if it's not some of the stuff he's doing in TNA, I'm looking at the stuff he was doing in Ring of Honor when it was him and Matt against the Bucks. And like, you know, the killer matches that those two teams had. The Young Bucks were a team that people like, they really liked, but I remember like Brian Alvarez used to write in the Figure 4. He used to call them the blonde Buck and the other one, because he didn't really know what their names were. But I think like that feud that they had with the Hardys not only made people go like, oh, dang, the Hardys still rule, but it was also like, dang, these Young Buck kids are awesome.
I think that rivalry was like a proper passing of the torch moment, you know?
Yeah. Right.
And one that was, it felt organic. And I legitimately will go back and watch the pop that Matt Hardy gets when his face pops on the screen in Ring of Honor for the first time. It's deafening. It's absolutely deafening, that pop. It's ridiculous. If you haven't seen it, go and check that out after you finish watching this podcast. But that Ring of Honor run, like their ladder match against the Young Bucks at Supercard of Honor, whatever year it was, that is one of my favorite matches of all time. Because the Hardys are essentially my favorite tag team of all time. And then the Young Bucks are who I consider to be the best tag team of all time. And seeing them go at it in a proper passing of the torch moment that had a lot of care put into it, like they recreated the finish of the Edge and Christian Hardy's ladder match.
Yeah.
It wasn't the finish in that match, but you could tell a lot of care and effort was put into that match. And it's just the very exact kind of wrestling that I want to see. And it's with Jeff Hardy at the center of it.
Like this here, it's like you can't even hear what Matt was saying because that pop was so huge.
Legit.
And you want to talk about pops? The WrestleMania return.
The next day.
I know. So, oh man, what a mad weekend that was. I remember, I was in a golf course. Why was I at a golf course? But I was at a golf. Do you know what it was? It's because my wife and her sister were doing like a sort of a 10K run thing. And so like I can't follow them around with them. So I took them there and I dropped them off, watched them start their run. And then I went off to a coffee shop and then came back to like see them finish up their run, and listening to Wrestling Observer Radio that was on the Saturday before. Actually, it might have been on the Sunday actually of Mania. And they were just talking about that ladder war. And are we going to see the Hardys show up at Mania tonight? And it'll be, and then like Brian and Dave being like, I think we may end up seeing them there, but also there's every chance that we don't.
Yeah. And I was in a slightly different situation because I was still working in retail at the time. I was still in university at the time. And I was at work and I was supposed to leave work at around like 6:00 p.m. or so, give or take. And I don't know why I didn't figure WrestleMania into my schedule for that week, but I checked my phone. Don't take your phone onto the floor, retail workers. I was checking my phone because it was a dead day, and they say like a WWE car pulled up at the Hardys like meet and greet.
Yeah.
And I saw that, and I had been thinking like maybe there was a chance, like maybe, I don't know. As soon as I saw that, I was like, I gotta go home.
Yeah.
Sorry, like that's the deal. Like, and I told my boss, like, hey, is there any way I can leave early because I'm not gonna miss this? And sure enough, it happened, and I lost my voice for 3 days after that. I had to give a presentation at school the next day, and I had no voice left.
Someone just said that they were at that show. Dude, I'm so envious of people that were at that Mania. Like, it wasn't, I don't think it was one of the best Manias ever or anything like that, but I wish I could have been there for that moment.
Yeah. Like, when they talk about WrestleMania moments, that's a WrestleMania moment.
100%, yeah. We've got a bunch of chats actually from people who are sharing their Jeff Hardy memories as well. And very shortly, we're going to be joined by the man who designed this Jam That Championship. It's a double guest show. So before that, favorite Jeff Hardy, if you could pick one, your favorite like Jeff Hardy moment, memory, match, or anything, what are you going for?
I'll give one that I bet no one else would think of, because this means a lot to me personally. Jeff Hardy versus Shawn Michaels on Raw the week before No Way Out 2008. Because this to me was the first time that I got to see Jeff Hardy like really shine on TV as a wrestling fan. You know, it was right after when he did the enormous Swanton bomb onto Randy Orton, right after he'd done the big whisper in the wind off of the steel cage onto Umaga and stuff like that. Like, I just missed those moments. But seeing him beat Shawn Michaels in the main event of Raw was like, this guy's cool, you know? Like, this guy is a top main event guy. He's going to win the WWE title. He's going to go on to WrestleMania. It was really legit. And it was a really great match too.
Yeah, really, really great stuff. I mean, for me, I've kind of mentioned it already, but I think it's that Rumble match, to be honest. It really is for me. It's the Rumble table match. As someone who was just getting into wrestling and seeing those two guys, I found my favorite wrestlers like on that show. Like all of a sudden, like I was already into The Rock because I was watching Heat and he had like, you know, his VTs and stuff. But I'm like, oh, right, cool. So these guys are my favorite now. Like, this is my favorite tag team. I want to see this tag team win all the time. And Jeff was the guy that like I was really, really drawn to. Do you know what? I tell you what. Let's we'll do the chats first, and then we'll speak to Paul Martin, the designer of this belt, who is patiently waiting in the green room for us. Oh, he's giving us the hands up to say that he's all right. Thanks, Paul. So yeah, let's see what you've got to say about this. Lakshmam Narasimham B said, "Climb the ladder, kid. Make yourself famous. Nothing can top that, in my opinion." You mentioned it earlier, man. What a call.
What a call. Like one of Jim Ross's best in one of Jeff Hardy's best matches.
Riot DR, as a crazy kid from Carolina with a crazy dream, Jeff Hardy was an inspiration to me. Considering I wasn't particularly big, watching him and Matt essentially revive tag team wrestling meant so much to me. My best to the Hardy family and love to you, Lots. Love to you as well, Riot DR. LJ Mickey, my favorite Jeff Hardy moment has to be the CM Punk feud. Also, those ridiculous spots in the ladder matches. For me, he truly is the ultimate daredevil. This is one of my favorite Jeff Hardy stories, but it's the WrestleMania X7. They have a spot where they have 3 ladders set up. Yes. And the idea is that Jeff is going to essentially stepping stone his way across these ladders and get to the belt, and then he'll end up dangling there, right? Only during the day, he can't do it. He tries it, but he falls down. Tries again, falls down. Tries again, falls down. And someone says, like, maybe we shouldn't do this spot then. And Jeff's like, nah, it'll be all right on the night. What happens, Tempest? He goes up and he falls down.
He falls down, and that was going to be the spot that set up the spear.
Spear, yeah.
You know? And like, sure, like he sets the ladder back up, he climbs up, and they do the spot anyway. And no one forgets, no one remembers that because you just get to see the big spear spot. But imagine how much cooler that could have been. He had done like the little tightrope walk and got across the 3 ladders. Like,
it's just so wonderfully Jeff Hardy. They'll be like, I mean, I've messed it up 4 times in a row, but I'm sure it'll be all right in the night.
Yep.
Kat said, I remember watching the Jeff Hardy and Punk feud in 2009 when I was 8 years old. I was so invested in Jeff being champion and kicking the S word out of Punk. I will forever cherish that feud. I hope Jeff is all right and pulls through. Do you know, actually, the other thing I wanted to mention before we get into our last couple of chats we got here, the outpouring of love I've seen for Jeff. It's been so warm, like so lovely. We've seen a lot of people from WWE, Bayley, Damian Priest, Big E, Cedric Alexander, Mustafa Ali have all been posting about like what a inspiration he is to them, how great he has been to them backstage at WWE shows, and really is like that. All we've had it a lot in these chats as well. That sentiment we had it a lot in the WrestleTalk news comments as well. I wish for the best for him and his family.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. You know, we want the best for this guy and his family. You know, wrestling takes a back seat in moments like this because Jeff Hardy means a lot to a lot of people. He is kind of like a people's champion type figure in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of outpouring of support and love for this guy. And I just want to see him be all right.
It's good to see where you feel about this from Joseph Ray. He said, I'll forever stand that Matt Hardy is my favorite wrestler ever. I've explained this to my friends before. Jeff was more entertaining. Matt, I feel, was the better wrestler, more well-rounded. Both entrance themes rock, both his WWE and his TNA one. I always felt bad for Matt at times because it's kind of a similar thing a lot of people always said about. It's like Matt's the solid foundation. He was the guy. He was the wrestler of the group, and then Jeff was the younger, better-looking one with the cool hair. That as soon as he takes his top off, the girls will go wild for. And I'm like, oh, poor Matt.
Yeah, poor Matt. I mean, Jeff. I don't want to say that he was the spot monkey of the group because they're both very good wrestlers. Like they both can wrestle, and I think that goes a long way towards their presentation over the years. But yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of people say that like Matt was the steak and Jeff was the sizzle. It's just which of those two you consider more important, that might make you lean one way or the other.
And lastly, this from Brian Moore. He said, the first big wrestling show I saw was Mania 23, where Jeff got revenge on Edge for X7 by leg dropping him through a ladder. Been a fan ever since. Did you hear the fight report that Jeff was erratic? There was no evidence he was under the influence. Yeah, I did see that. I didn't actually get to cover this in the news. So I saw it too late, to be honest. And I have seen it, but I haven't fully read into it yet. So I don't know. It's up on my screen, but I haven't fully read into it. We didn't really use the show to kind of talk about that. We wanted to sort of like celebrate, look at the more positive side of things, and just hope for the better for him, really. But you know what? I actually am very curious because I have seen our guest nodding along throughout a lot of this, and to see what he's going. Don't be embarrassed by it, mate. It's all right. Please welcome to the WrestleTalk Podcast the man who designed this gorgeous Jam That Championship on my shoulder, Mr. Paul Martin. Hello, friend. How are you?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Tempest. To you too. You're looking handsome as ever. Well, no, thank you very much for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure to speak to both of you. It's a pleasure to speak kind of at the WrestleTalk viewers. So thank you to both of you. I thank you to all the viewers as well, because the feedback on the belt has been ridiculous, to be honest. So genuinely, I just appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, before we talked about the belt, did you have any a Jeff Hardy moment or memory that you wanted to share with us?
I'll tell you what. Well, I'm in the UK as well. I'm up in Scotland, Luke, and the Channel 4, you talking about that has made me feel so old.
I know, right? That was in 2000. That was 21 years ago.
That's insane. Honestly, like, same sentiments as you. I was born in 93, so I was an Attitude Era kid. WWF, Tempest were like this. Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh were kind of my upbringing.
Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was well in the thick of wrestling during the Hardy Boys, during the Triangle Ladder matches. I mean, as we all know, Stone Cold, The Rock, Taker, all of that was main event. But I think for a lot of us younger guys, the tag team matches, the Triangle Ladder matches, the TLCs, that was what kind of caught the eye more. And the spot you're talking about when Jeff tried to walk across the ladders at 17, like you said, I completely forgot that was what was leading up to the spear off the ladders, because it's shown so often as just him hanging off the ladder gets pulled away and he kind of whiplashes into the spear. I completely forgot that was the spot leading up.
Do you remember like the Channel 4 when they suddenly realized, is this the product that we've got? We need to start putting ad breaks into things.
Was that during the Miss Kitty incident?
It's because what they didn't do, all they had to do was look at the pay-per-view that happened beforehand, because it happened at Armageddon 99. Their first pay-per-view they got was the Rumble 2000, and they also had on that show the Miss Rumble bikini contest,
the Mae Young
with Mae Young.
It sure did, didn't they?
It sure did, didn't it?
Yeah.
But the following year's Royal Rumble, because they started putting ad breaks into the pay-per-view broadcast. They were on a tape delay in case they needed to edit around things. And I remember in 2001 when you have the Big Show's return, it literally goes like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and when it's the Big Show, ad break. And then he had to wait till 5 minutes. It comes back and Big Show makes his entrance.
Jesus, that's like the Channel 4 talk has just made me feel painfully old. So thank you for that. That was that was uncomfortable.
You're very welcome. It was 21 years ago. And we can now thank you, Paul, because let's talk about this gorgeous Jam That Championship belts. I'm going to main screen mine for just a moment so I can hold this up for people to see. Beautiful, isn't it?
Thank you very much.
It's very, very nice. So, Paul, I mean, how? Okay, so let's start from the beginning. How did we get involved with you, and what's your sort of history with belts and everything?
Well, my history of belts is not to bore anyone with a long story. I actually started out on YouTube making like homemade belts when I was a lot younger. During the very early days of YouTube, I was making them out of things like wood and vinyl and anything I could find around the house. And it was actually not until I'd finished high school, I took a gap year. Instead of going to university, doing the smart thing, going to do my architecture degree, I did the less smart thing and thought, you know what, I'm going to move into this belt thing, try that for a year and see how that goes. So I built up a reasonable following on a YouTube channel, which no longer exists anymore. And I kind of realized that it was something that I could kind of try out for at least a year, see if it worked out. And if it did, I could sack off uni and not bother with that. So thankfully it did work out. And ever since about 2011, I've been working on belts. I've been kind of repairing belts, making custom belts full time. And that leads us to the championship. So I've been in contact with, it was mainly with Ollie at first, actually. We spoke around the start of 2020, but then obviously the pandemic happened and it was kind of emails here and there, lost contact a little bit. And then middle of this year, we spoke again. The plan for obviously a kind of custom made championship came about again, and the ball started to slowly roll, emailed a few ideas back and forth, and then I actually spoke to your wonderful colleague, Pete. And that was the first actual phone call I had with anyone. And we basically just kind of jotted down a few ideas, what we wanted for the belt, what would be possible. And I need to give some credit to actually your WrestleTalk design team, or who works on the design side, because I sent over a few sample designs, a few things that I had thought of, a few kind of ideas with where parts of the design would be positioned, and then eventually I got sent back what is kind of compiled by the WrestleTalk designers, and from there I altered that into something that would actually work as a physical plate etched into metal. So it's I don't want to take all the credit for the full design. It was a collaboration certainly between the designers and myself.
It was pretty wicked. So when it arrived in the office and we weren't there, I think it was like it arrived on a Friday or something. It was just before Survivor Series, because we debuted the belt at Survivor Series, and it arrived the Friday before. And we were on. I just got a message from Adam, because he was the only one that was in the office, and it said, "Does anyone want to see the belt?" And so like all of a sudden we all jumped onto this Google Meet thing, and he was like, "Sure, we'll do the big grand unveiling for the belt." And we were like, "Oh man, this is like," because Pete has been quite, I'm not saying like sort of secretive about it, but this has been Pete's project. So like Pete has been sort of like working with you and everything like that. So we've seen like bits and pieces of it here and there, but this has sort of been Pete's passion project, which is why I felt quite bad about taking it from him for Survivor Series.
See, I didn't realize it was actually secretive, because I know Pete was on holiday for a brief time. So I was on a phone call with Ollie and Rich, and I showed them the progress. So I don't know if that was something I should have done or not. Now.
No, it's all fine. It's I think it's Pete. He just really wanted to work. Like he was really like getting involved, and he was enjoying it so much. And so like when he finally got to hold on to that belt on the Survivor Series stream, there was this briefly, because I then jammed in my Jam in the Jar, and I didn't steal it from it. I won it fair and square. That's how Jam in the Jar works. So like it was, I've seen that look of pride on Pete a handful of times, and he's like,
fine. Remember, he's fine. So
he's absolutely fine. He's okay about it.
What tells you otherwise?
He was very
is fine. It's fine.
He was just like, he was really proud of the design, and we're so pleased with it, because it is a really, really cool design. Like there's so many little details on there that I absolutely love, and even things like I don't think I expected anything like this, but so I can try and get this up onto the screen. Like WrestleTalk is etched into the leather. Like it's so good.
Yeah, when we designed the belt, it was, well, I've got the blueprint right here that we ended up going with. So that's essentially what gets transferred onto the metal plate for it to be etched. At that point, when I was speaking with Pete and then Ollie later on, when I asked about the leather, they just said kind of free reign, do what you want. But the one thing I remember Ollie saying was, if you can make it kind of obnoxiously branded, that would be fantastic. And I thought to myself, I like that, because obviously the WWE belts, they have their logos everywhere. Their belt is one big logo at this point. And when he said kind of just to make it obnoxiously branded, I was like, okay, I know where I'm going with this. The WrestleTalk, the jam jar in the leather as well. So I loved doing that. The custom things like that in the leather is a really enjoyable thing to get to do. So I'm thrilled that you like that.
Oh no, I absolutely love it. I think it's great. I mean, it's calling it obnoxiously branded is such an Ollie Davis thing to ask for. That is delightful. You have got a plethora of belts behind you. So
I put that one in place thinking, it would be a nice tribute to your previous guest that I had to follow here. But so best of luck if he does end up challenging for the newer version of that, obviously. But
you are, so I mean, as I think we all are, but Tempest, I definitely know that you were in this as well. A bit of a belt head in terms of like championship designs and things like that. But I'll ask Paul first. What's your all-time favorite design? I know it's a basic question, but it's one that I like to ask people. It's like, what's your favorite belt design?
Oh my God! Why didn't I expect this as a question? I should have prepared for this.
Come on, Paul. It was right there, mate. I'm a basic interviewer. It was so
obvious. Why didn't I think of this? Do I do the kind of company thing and say, "Oh, it's the one on your shoulder, mate"? Hey. I know what I'm doing. To be honest with you, I think the classic Big Gold is possibly my favorite. Other than that, the Attitude Era Heavyweight is one. Yeah, there you go. Big Gold WCW belt. I've actually got one sat right here next to me. So it's a very nice belt. I do love that belt. That's a classic. I love the heavyweight from the Attitude Era, the big ego version of the belt. To be honest, I've worked on so many belts over the years that even the current WWE belts, when I get to like restore one of those replica belts or just modify it and upgrade it, I start to really like them as well. So like the current Blue Universal, I like that way more than I should. It's obviously nowhere near the top tier of belts, but from where it was before when it debuted, it has shot up in my estimation, which is probably a shameful thing for me to say, to be honest.
Tempest, what about you? What's your favorite belt design?
The answer to that question changes like the wind. The Winged Eagle title is a pretty easy answer a lot of the time. I will say that one. I also really like the IWGP Intercontinental title with the white strap. I personally enjoy that one a little bit more than the heavyweight title.
Or you mean the Cody neck tattoo?
Well, that and the classic heavyweight title that Okada has graciously brought back.
I don't know how I forgot the Okada IWGP. That is probably my favorite, to be honest. Yeah. It's one that I see all the time, and for some reason I didn't even think of it there. Yeah, great choice, Tempest.
The what I would refer to as the Triple H world title. The blue. It's my belt. Like that was, and it's when we first decided we were going to start like defending a belt on the channel. That was the one. Me and Ollie were like, well, that's the belt we get, right? Like that's the belt we get, and we put a sticker over it for the time being, until we can get like an actual proper belt in. But yeah, I mean, so you've made belts before. Like, talk about some of the belts that you've made for people.
I mean, to be honest, I spent much of my early adult life, from my late teens to mid 20s, spending pretty much every weekend in UK indie locker rooms. I put together the rings for mainly up here in Scotland, but kind of around the UK at various times. So throughout my early 20s, I was making custom belts for indie promotions, and just as a kind of part of it, I wanted to spend time with them. I wanted to learn about wrestling. I did a bit of wrestling training as well with WrestleTalk's friend Damo. He is one of the best people I've ever met in wrestling. I spent like 3 years seeing him almost every weekend, so he's a lovely guy. But I got to make a lot of belts for a lot of independent companies. We've worked with Discovery Wrestling up here in Scotland and Edinburgh. They're fantastic. I think Joe Hendry currently holds their belt that I made. I worked with PCW down in Preston before. But the WrestleTalk belt is actually the first belt I've made since COVID started, because probably lucky timing on my part. I actually was moving house at the start of 2020, and I thought, right beforehand, I stopped taking orders for belts. I was only working on like leather work or repairing belts at that point because I didn't want to take on any big projects. And then the pandemic hit, so I thought, okay, we'll put a hold on custom belts, because as you've seen from the TNT belt on AEW, they had to debut it unfinished because so many processes were impossible to do during the pandemic. So the WrestleTalk belt is actually the first custom belt I've made since the start of the pandemic. So that was really fun to work on. And I mean, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to throw a cheap plug in here.
Over it.
If you want to see a video of the making of the WrestleTalk belt, check out my YouTube channel, Paul Martin Belts. I have a pretty detailed video making the belt there, and you'll see how much of a pain in the arse some of those details Luke is talking about actually were to do.
Absolutely, yeah. Our moderators will be spamming the link for that in the chat moment. So yeah, I mean, it is a great. In fact, there it is, Mandy Savage, bang, straight in there. It's such a good video. Well done to you as well, and thank you again
so much.
Oh well, thank you so much for this belt. Before you go though, I mean, we've talked about favorite designs, but what are some of the worst belts?
I mean, the go-to kind of generic answer is always the Divas belt, isn't it? I think that's one that people always point at as that is kind of the worst possible belt design. I'm gonna shame myself. I like the Divas, but I think it's funny. Because to be honest, I appreciate all like fantastic wrestling. I appreciate technical wrestling. I love all kinds of wrestling, but kind of as I've gotten older, the kind of botchamania style of wrestling things, you'll see that when things just go as wrong as possible, that's probably a part of me growing into adulthood amongst indie wrestling where things go wrong all the time.
Oh yeah.
So as far as least favorite belts, I'm looking around trying to think. Do I just say the Divas belt, even though I think that's pretty cool?
I mean, I'm going to throw out an option here because I hate the current WWE tag team titles. I hate those belts so much. That's just
a fair shout.
They're gaudy, like the little penny designs on them. They just look cheap and
Luke. They're nickels now.
Oh, sorry.
They are.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, all right. Well, nickels then. Like it's just and maybe it's because like I do like the Attitude Era belts. Those world titles like so much. I think they're gorgeous designs. Like I've always liked tag belts because there's two of them. So like the TNA tag titles were always really nice. AEW's world tag titles were really nice. NXT UK tag titles are stunning.
All of NXT UK's belts are A1.
They're so good. So it pisses me off that the main titles are so rubbish.
See, I didn't actually like the NXT UK tags up until this week. I bought and reviewed a replica from WWE Shop of it this week recently. And when I opened it, I was like, oh, this is actually amazing. Yeah. I thought this looked terrible, but actually seeing it in person, it's a tiny, tiny belt. But seeing it in person completely changed my mind on that. So I fully agree. And yeah, the main roster tag belts are pretty atrocious. From a friend of mine, I have been reliably informed that the replacements for those have been ready for about 4 years now and were just never used for whatever reason. So that would have been a replacement that had the kind of, how the superstar side plates are all removable. That would have been one to fit in with that design. So I don't want to start rumors or anything, but for about 4 years now, apparently they've been ready to go and they were just never approved. So that's happened a lot of times throughout the years as far as belts go.
It was a few years back. They were going to do cruiserweight tag titles, weren't they? And like there were designs floating around for them and everything.
I think those were made as well. I think they were made into physical belts as well. But then 205 Live, I think, didn't reach the expectations they might have had for it. So yeah, WWE's warehouse, from what I'm told, has a lot of never before seen custom belts for superstars, replacement belts. I would love to just go look through there and just see the unused designs that have never been shown in public.
Tempest.
It's the 24/7 title.
Of course it is.
It's terrible.
Of course it is, yeah.
The Art Deco belt.
Can't stand that belt. I've never liked that belt. Mick Foley, I went to one of his shows shortly thereafter when he had unveiled the belt, like later that summer. I think it was before SummerSlam. In fact, they did a Mick Foley like reading comedy type show that I went to, and he was like, I feel so bad. I feel like I started off the 24/7 title on such a bad foot. Like I didn't have a good night and a good promo. I was like, Mick, nothing you could have done would have saved that belt.
Actually, just before we go, I think this is the discussion that we need to have. I think we need to finally get a decision here. Is the spinner belt actually good? Because Paul, I'm curious to know on you, because as someone who designs belts, who like the intricacies of belts as well, and little bits and pieces here and there. As Rob Van Dam said, it does spin. Like it's a as someone who has dedicated their life and craft to belts, where are we with the spinner belts?
This is one of those moments again where I would just get heat. The spinner, as far as the construction, the work that goes into the spinner belt, it's possibly my favorite belt ever as far as the work that goes into it.
Yeah.
It's the most expensive belt WWE have ever made. Every copy of it was over $10,000. It was ridiculous. But the amount, no other belt maybe aside from the original Big Gold, which was the original version of this was actually handmade. It was carved out of sterling silver. I think that was what it was, by a belt buckle company. So that wasn't actually made by a belt maker. But as far as, the spinner, I like it because I appreciate the work that has gone into it and the detail that is achieved. I can fully appreciate that it looks ridiculous. It's a gaudy kind of, it is a piece of like bling jewelry for Cena's character of the time, obviously. But from my point of view, as someone who makes belts, this is my, as you say, my livelihood, how I make a living, and all I do is work on championship belts. When I look at the spinner belt, I see a crafted piece of brilliance. And I really have to kind of stretch my words to say that, but because I can feel the hatred kind of weighing me down now.
There's that comment, Peter Mullins, get out.
Yes, I was expecting that. But from the craftsmanship point of view, I love it. From the design, it's the spinner belt. It's behind me here, so that'll tell you all you need to know.
Tempo T Yu-Gi-Oh, where do you stand on the spinner belt?
I don't think it's necessarily as bad as some other people, but that being said, you shouldn't have your number one title being a toy. And it was a toy,
But it's the best selling replica they've ever made by a distance.
Because it was a toy.
It spins, Tempest. It spins.
For me, like it made so much sense when it was on Cena. And it was just like, oh yeah, that totally works. Because he had the US one as well that spun. It was just like, all right, yeah, now he's done it for the WWE version. That totally makes sense. It's when Triple H is holding it, you're like, well, now it just looks weird. Like, this was weird with you holding it.
I was hoping and praying at the time that Undertaker would win it because I really wanted to see him holding it more than anything. But he kept on being on the brand that had the Big Gold, and he kept on winning the heavyweight. And I was just like, no, win the spinner. I want to see this so badly. But it never happened, unfortunately.
Please, Paul, plug away. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us about your Twitter. Tell us what you're currently working on.
Well, thank you for this opportunity again. It's been a pleasure to speak to you both and to speak at the viewers. Once again, I just want to thank the viewers for the ridiculously positive feedback we've had on the belt. That video has done great numbers, and the feedback has been nothing but positive. So thank you to all the viewers. If you do want to see the video, my YouTube channel again is Paul Martin Belts. My Instagram is PM Belts, I believe. And I think my Twitter is @PaulMartinBelts. So that will be it. What I'm working on at the moment, we've got a few belts that I can't really show because they're for indie companies, but I have a few that I will be doing similar videos as I did for the making of the WrestleTalk belt. In the new year, I'm hoping to move into a new workshop, so there'll be a lot of making of belt videos on my channel. So one that I'm actually remaking for that is a belt I made for an indie company in Scotland about 8 years ago, which is a mid-card belt based on Back to the Future.
Oh, cool.
So it was for a Scottish company. It was called the Future Division. So we've got the Back to the Future logo there on the center plate, and the side plates feature a DeLorean there. So, so that's a wrestling belt. And yeah, these are how the plates, I should say, start out their lives. That's the raw zinc right after it's been etched. From there, we do a lot of work on them, polishing them, then nickel plating them, then gold plating them, whatever we need to finish in that. But that's how they start. There's a few exciting things I'm working on. Just subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see that. Is that how we do this? Just plug away.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, just
like
and
and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, and that's the way we get around these places, really. Like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Paul, thank you so much for coming on this show. And it's taken us a couple of weeks, both of which were my fault.
Absolutely not. It's okay. It's been a genuine pleasure to speak to you both.
No,
so thank you for having me on.
Honestly, thank you so much for coming on. Tempest, I'll say thank you to you as well for coming onto the show, as always, my friend. We will be back next week, as per usual. Actually, no, do you know what? I was nearly gonna throw us out there, but I've got one more thing I will share with everyone. Last week on the WrestleTalk podcast, I shared a story with Denise Salcedo about me meeting Tom Holland and Zendaya, because I interviewed them for Spider-Man No Way Home, and I was so focused on calling her Zendaya, that unfortunately this happened. I am Luke Owen from Cineworld, and today I'm joined by the stars of Spider-Man No Way Home, Tom Dolland. Sorry, Tom Dolland.
You can call me Tom Dolland if you want.
Tom Dolland. I actually like that. It sounds like
nice
darling.
Name.
Like
Tom Dolland.
Oh goodness, I've made an absolute fool of myself before we've even begun our game. But are you ready to play a game with me today?
Do you want to play a game?
You got dressed up and everything.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I like an absolute tit in that video. I was like in full Cinemania gear for it. I was so ready. And I called him Tom Dolland. I've actually slept easier now that I've seen the footage, because at least they laughed about it. Anyway, I suppose now we can draw this to a close. But thank you again to Paul Martin for joining us today. Also, thank you to Shane Taylor for dropping by today to talk about ROH Final Battle. There it is, the ROH belt behind Paul right there. We'll be back tomorrow with the SmackDown review show. Won't we, Tempest? You and Pete tomorrow?
Yeah, sure will be. If this show is not better than the last 2 weeks of SmackDown, I don't know what I'll do. But probably review the show anyway, like I always do.
I was going to say, Tempest, that's exactly what you're going to do. You're just going to review the show, and you're going to like it.
Yeah.
And then I'll be back with Ollie Davis on the Tuesday to review Raw. But until then, I have been Luke Owen, D-A-D. That has been Tempo T Yu-Gi-Oh! That has been Paul Martin Belt. That was wrestling. Jam that jam, everyone. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.